I'm Professor Katerina Zakaria, the Director of Learning Community Events at the Department of Classics and Archaeology. And I invite you all to attend our events. In case you're interested, you can even get 1 unit for attending events this year. I can talk to you about that at the end of the event. I don't want to take up too much time because we have the excellent guest today and a session that is really for you. It is my great pleasure to introduce the Honorable Consul General of Greece, Christina Valassopoulou. A few words about her career so far. She arrived here in Los Angeles last year, I believe, right? 2 years ago? Wow. Time flies. Okay. She was in the Directorate for the Council of Europe and Human Rights in the Ministry of Affairs of the Hellenic Republic, and focal point for the Summit for Democracy. In 21-22, she was in the Directorate for the Council of Europe and Human Rights, Deputy Head of Mission of the Embassy of Greece in Ottawa. In 2016-20, she was in Geneva, and her field, Migration Humanitarian Affairs Officer for the Permanent Mission of Greece to the United Nations. 2014-16, she was EU-Turkey Relations Officer for the Directorate for European Union External Relations. And before that, 2010-14, she was in Nairobi in the embassy there as a Deputy Head for Mission. 2006-10, she was Permanent Representative of Greece to the European Union for Africa, Caribbean, and the Pacific. She holds a Bachelor in Law from the Athens National Kapodistrian University in Greece, a Master's of Science in Social Science from the Université Libre de Bruxelles in Belgium. And she is the recipient of Golden Lion of Alexandria Medal awarded by His Holiness the Pope and Patriarch of Alexandria and all Africa, Theodore II. It is a great pleasure to have someone with so much knowledge to talk to us about the position of Greece in the United Nations Security Council. And especially this is the 3rd time that Greece is introduced in this council. Let me ask Tanya to open up the website as I will read you something. So Greece was elected on June 6, 2024 as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. Do you want to come here? For the 2025-26 term with the support of 182 states. 3 Greek words of universal meaning starting with D will guide Greece's term on the United Nations Security Council. And as a classicist, it is my pleasure to pronounce dialogue, dialogos, diplomacy, diplomatia, democracy, demokratia. The emblem of the candidacy is the olive tree, the logo, and its branch. Since it was planted in Attica soil by goddess Athena, the olive tree has represented peace and wisdom. It became the symbol of the Olympic truce during the ancient Olympic Games when all wars were in pause. A crown of olive leaves was the prize for the winners of the Olympic Games. It was the symbol of fair play. The olive tree is also a point of reference for Mediterranean countries and people throughout the centuries. So as I call on the Honorable Consul to come and talk to you, I wanted to give you also some logistics. The Consul will speak to you and then we will open the floor. You can either walk to the microphone on the right side or my student will give you the microphone. So please say who you are, what year of your study and what major you're in, and ask your question. I also have some questions that my students prepared in advance, so I may just call on you to read on that question. So let's enjoy this discussion. Consul General.
2 first comments. This is the The previous picture was the before, 13 months in Los Angeles with the traffic. And this is the today, after 13 months, with LA traffic and with the fires. So the other thing I want to say is that whenever I hear my career being recounted, I feel old, and I'm very happy to be with you today, this young audience, full of hope, full of dreams, and you should stay like that, because time flies, I can tell you this one. Some of the elements that your professor presented, if we add them all together, they make 20 plus years as a career diplomat with the Greek Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the joy and pride of my life. So, thank you for being here. This is a unique opportunity for me. I see many friends. Thank you for coming. And when I talk to young people, I always try to place myself in your position. What would make it exciting for me to hear a diplomat speak about? So I'm gonna talk about the significance of the United Nations. So it's my belief, and I always share this with my colleagues, if the UN did not exist after World War II, we would have to invent it. Because the UN is the singular forum in world politics where everyone sits together in huge rooms and we negotiate, we talk, we argue, we present our positions, we retreat, we stand firm, and we most of the times come to a consensus. So for a diplomat, that is the joy of life. And some issues are more difficult than others, but this is the essence, because for me, diplomacy is the three things mentioned, and I'm very proud because I have worked with the ambassador who came out with this idea and this logo, and dialogue. Without dialogue, you cannot sit around a table and try to solve your differences. Without diplomacy, diplomacy has its own protocol, its own way of maneuvering across and against the difficult issues. And democracy, the basis of working together, of having governments elected, of having people represented, their voice represented. And the UN is one forum where each country, as you know, has one vote, one voice, and we all try for consensus. This is the norm. There are exceptions, as you can understand, to the norm. So a bit of a regional perspective, Greece, located at the south of the Balkan Peninsula, is a country that has a long history, as I'm sure you know, and an interesting history. So we went through many periods of civilization, of being the lighthouse for the rest of the world. And then other empires came and went. And today's Greece, for which I must say that I'm very proud to be representing, is a member of almost all of the major international organizations, because this alone is a signal of cooperation and of the need to talk with our counterparts. So, so Greece is a member of the European Union, of course, which is the most significant European organization, and the Council of Europe, the older European regional organization. We are also a member of NATO, and we're very happy to have the US in NATO as well. And all these organizations, what we do is that we try to promote and advance Greece's position. And you can imagine our position can be very strong on some issues, like the Cyprus issue, which some of you might know, and like the relationship with our neighbor, Turkey. And we are very fervent supporters of international law and the international order. So our two-term position as a non-permanent member state of the United Nations Security Council is a brilliant opportunity to promote all of this, dialogue, diplomacy, democracy, and our positions through discussions with our counterparts. And as you know, not everybody in the UN Security Council is on an equal footing. We have the 10 non-permanent and the 5 permanent. That makes it more exciting for a diplomat, because you need to adjust your thinking, your logic, your arguments in order to try to suit everybody. When I was back home, being the director of the Human Rights Department in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Greece, and they asked me to make presentations like this to the Diplomatic Academy of our ministry, I always said that diplomacy is about coming up with a proper argument. You need to build your position, you need to be able to explain your position, you need to be able to convince your interlocutor that your position is correct, fair, and just. We don't want to convince everybody that we're right. There's a difference. Some people think that their position is always right. No. We work with others, we come to an understanding, we come to a consensus, and everybody leaves the room, maybe not extremely excited, but at least content. So, 193 member states of the General Assembly, 93, yes? 15 members at the Security Council, and a lot of work to be done. Now, I think, and I discussed with your professor, that maybe it would be a good idea for me to stop the monologue here and open the floor. And if you have questions on how these principles are going to be implemented through our 2-year term, I'd be more than happy to try to explain.
Hi, my name's Antonella. I'm an international relations student. I guess my question was, given that this term related to respected international law and principles of the UN Charter, there's a mention of how peace and security cannot prevail in the absence of development and growth. There's a claim that Greece will contribute to reducing poverty and inequality in the world. How can Greece focus its efforts towards global poverty when 26.1% of its population is at risk of poverty? So, I guess in other words, how can Greece serve as an advocate against poverty when its people aren't adequately protected economically by the government?
What is the source of that estimation?
APN.in so it's the European Anti-Poverty Network.
This is not a European organization. It's focused on European Union, but it's not a European organization. I mean, it's not an institution of the EU, just to clear that up. So, I'm not going to argue if that estimation number is correct or not. I'm going to try to explain how information like that works. So the UN has its own parameters, another Greek word, about estimating the level of poverty. I would greatly doubt it, and of course I stand to be corrected because I don't know the source, that for EU member states you don't apply the same indices. You cannot compare the EU, European member states, to Africa, for example. You cannot compare the situation in the first world with the third world. So my advice on such information would be not to take it face value, but to look what are they comparing. They could be comparing the same things. They could not. They could be comparing different. Is it attendance to school? Is it lunches provided at school? Is it the income of the family on a month, in a year? So I'm not going to dispute it or accept it. I'm just explaining that all these reports have a methodology. So unless you have the methodology, it's a bit, you have to explore more. On the essence of the question, though, there's poverty in the States. There is poverty in the UK. There is poverty in all major donors, international donors. Domestic policy is a different thing than international policy. So, coming back to the question, Greece can, of course, contribute to the alleviation of poverty in other countries, in other regions of the world, and still have some issues domestically. One is not excluding the other. Again, I would be very interested in learning the comparison, what is compared against what. But we have, as a member of the European Union, we contribute to the European Union budget. That the European Union has a budget, I think, of trillions. Some of those trillions are located through the EU to Africa, to Asia, and to countries that need support. So this is one level how we help development. Nationally, as an independent state, Greece has dedicated a percentage of its annual budget to actions that help alleviate poverty through education, through supplying meals for children, through supporting families. At the moment, I'm not aware, but I can come back. I can go do my research and come back. But how does the US fight poverty? They contribute internationally. USAID has been wonderful. Many, many years, one of the major international donors is the US because it has the capacity. Does that mean that it has eradicated poverty domestically? I think we can all agree that some issues still persist. So my point is that first, such reports we must examine the methodology, how one comes to such a result, such an outcome, and then domestic policy and international policy are not opposing factors. You can work on the domestic problem, as most countries do, and at the same time, you can contribute to alleviate the problem on a global level. And that question will be very interesting to see how things develop globally, depending on some recent decisions that I'm sure you all heard. And we will have to wait and see how it goes. But one does not preclude the other. Both policies can run at the same time, maybe with different success levels, but we can do both. Thank you. Thank you.
What I hear from the question that Antonella was asking, there is something that we will need to clarify. What does it mean for a country to be a part of the United Nations Security Council? It doesn't mean that it solves all the issues that are the 6 pillars domestically. So that's something that I think we will be coming back to a lot. Yeah.
These issues, the 6 priorities, are not intended to be domestically. These are addressed to all of the General Assembly member states, and these actually fall within the jurisdiction of the UN Security Council. You cannot have a priority for the UN Security Council if it's not envisaged in the Charter. So if I wanted to solve the traffic situation in LA, I could never have it being dealt with by the Security Council. So all these priorities are are touching upon the mandate of the Security Council. And this is why you see those there and not other ones.
I do Chisholm. I'm a political science major and I'm a senior. So my question was, how has Greece's experience with the migration crisis shaped the policies it intends to support on global migration? And what role does it plan on playing in shaping international responses to refugee movements and border security?
That's an excellent question. Thank you very much. And that is an issue that is very close to my heart. When I was posted in Geneva, your professor already mentioned, I was the desk officer for humanitarian and migration issues. So that was a time when Greece was every day on the front pages of the newspapers because we didn't do enough, we didn't do well. I can tell you, and I full-heartedly believe it, that Greece has adopted policies that make other countries be ashamed of themselves. We have introduced free education for refugee and migrant children. We have come up with a specialized curriculum. So if you have a group of refugee or migrant children that come from Muslim states, we teach them, we find teachers to teach them their own beliefs and their religion. If we have refugee or migrant children from Africa speaking Swahili, we find teachers who can teach in their language. Apart from the education, we have free access to first-level healthcare. So anybody who entered the country irregularly, and I'm not going to say illegally, there's a difference between the two terms. So anyone who has entered the country irregularly has access, free access to first-level healthcare. I would challenge you to find which other European country has that. Maybe one or two. We have also fully respected the right to seek asylum because as the United Nations Convention on Refugee states, a refugee has the right to seek asylum, not to be granted. Again, different words, different meanings. So as far as I know, there was only one time in recent history that we, for lack of a better word, we put a hold on the right to seek asylum, and that was for a very limited time, period of time, I think 2000, March, 2020, March, when our neighbor released a large number of its refugees and migrants to our border. So that was the only time that Greece closed the border. After the Syrian crisis, I don't want to name names, you read the paper, you are informed citizens, many European states closed their borders. We never did. And that is a very proud stance that we took. The only time I can't remember the word, we asked for an exception from the right to seek asylum was that time when you had about 500,000 people rushing to our land borders in Thrace. So again, when the crisis ended, they were allowed to seek asylum. But to seek asylum is not the same thing as receiving asylum. The 1951 Refugee Convention is very clear about who is a refugee. And Greece has been a protagonist, another Greek word, in the relevant consultations in Geneva. Yours truly was a proud delegate in those negotiations about the Global Compact on Refugees. So we wanted to enhance the 1951 Convention. But you have to be careful with international politics because, as we said, not everybody agrees with you. If you try to broaden the scope, some countries are going to ask to abolish the existing legal framework of protection. So it was tiptoeing and making small steps of progress. But in the end, I can tell you the Global Compact on Refugees, which is a wonderful international text. I encourage you to find it and to read it, about refugee protection, was made even stronger through consensus. And being witness to the difficulty of international discussions and negotiations, up until the last meeting, there was one country who was saying, no, I'm not going to sign this document, but it did. So this is what keeps us going in this business. There is always room for maneuver. There is always room for discussion, for consensus, for understanding. We must talk to each other, and we must try to come up with the correct arguments. So I was then proud of Greece's achievements in this sector, and I'm still proud, although I'm not responsible for that file yet. Compared to other countries, we have done strands of progress and protection for migrants and refugees. Thank you. Thank you.
Do we have any more questions on migrants and refugees, or should we move? Yes?
I was just wondering if it would be possible to clarify the difference between a regular refugee and a legal
Again, words matter, as you know. So, some countries have made it a crime in their criminal code. Whoever crosses the borders without a permit, without a visa, without a passport. For some countries, that is a crime punishable by jail. This is not the case for Greece. So for us, it's not a crime. It is an administrative affront. You don't end up in jail. The difference is very significant, because if you're charged for a crime, you're a person who doesn't speak the language, who have the right, of course, to a lawyer, but who don't have you don't have any documents, and you're thrown in jail. That is the outcome of the legal procedure, of the criminalization. We call it the criminalization of migration. For countries that view irregular entry as an administrative problem, you're still entitled to seek asylum. There's no guarantees you're going to get it. And you're not put in jail. You are placed temporarily until your asylum request is examined on a center, on a facility, where your lawyer can locate you, where you can be cared for. And that was the situation on the islands when we had a problem after the Syrian exodus. So we had around 1 million people crossing our border. Did we arrest them? No. Did we manage to put them all in a facility, to offer them food and water and accommodation and a tent? It had to be a tent over their heads? No. But we were a hosting country with not millions, thousands of people. And while their asylum applications were being processed, the government was taking measures to protect them, because you're obliged, when a state signs international treaties, they're obliged to adhere to them. And we have a very good record of adhering to international conventions and treaties. So, and if you try to escape your obligations, we have wonderful international organizations such as UNHCR, the refugee agency, such as IOM, the immigration organization, that come to you. They came to me, we had a talk, and we exchanged views, and we always came to an understanding. So Again, this goes to the previous question about poverty. Somebody can say you're not doing well on that aspect, but you talk, you explain, and you try to do better next time. That is the idea.
Okay, so we were under the pillar 6, I think. So maybe I can ask somebody to come for pillar 1, unless, what is your question there at the back? You want to come to the front?
With migrants, what is the policies of religious
Could you
freedom?
come and introduce yourself? Because it's being recorded, that's why we need to do it this way. Thank you.
My name is Tom. I'm a film finance major. I was wondering with your openness with migrants, what is like Greece's policies on religious freedom, especially on non-Orthodox persons?
Freedom of religion is securely protected in Greece. We have one official religion, Father Michael. You have the expert here. So there is one official religion, East Orthodox Christianity, and you will find synagogues in Greece. You will find mosques in Greece. You will find Alevites. Do we call them Alevites? Alevites? I think they're called Alevites in English. They're a sect of Muslims. So we have a Muslim minority. We have a Muslim minority up in Thrace. So freedom of religion is fairly secured in Greece. Of course, as in any country, there may be some instances. For example, now it's the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, so we're talking about anti-Semitism more. Maybe there are some incidents, but the public, the people and the government are fully open. There is not a single law that abolishes or, I'm forgetting my English, that's why I'm going, apagorevi? Prohibits religions. So maybe you will definitely not find as many mosques as churches, but and maybe the discussion to open a mosque in Athens have taken a lot of time, but there are places where people meet and enjoy their religious freedom.
Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I know in the U.S. like we don't have a state, country-sanctioned religion. It's not in our books, but in Greece, is there Greek Orthodox is in by law national religion?
It's protected by the Constitution. That doesn't mean that the other ones are prohibited. There's a difference. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Sadie Balling. I'm a junior aviation major. And the question I was asking, I even like years 1 and 5, I think. So although an Israel-Hamas ceasefire is recently declared, the conflict remains an issue in terms of international security. As a member of the United Nations Security Council, how does Greece plan to advocate for the security of the region, solidifying the safety of the Palestinian people from further crises, and maintaining peace between Israel and its neighboring countries, especially keeping in mind a number of Palestinian children and infants who were either killed or left permanently disabled after the prolonged attacks, as well as the fact that a large influx of refugees coming into Greece in 2024 were fleeing Palestinians.
Very current question and an excellent question. Thank you, Shady. So the good thing about being a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council is that you're not alone. You have the whole team which you can talk to and influence. So what does the UN Security Council does? It introduces topics on its agenda. It negotiates resolutions, and it's the only institution of the UN that can enforce these resolutions. And it can also issue statements. So there's a lot of work to be done and a lot of room to work. We are adamant in our resolve to have civilians protected. So, civilians of any country. So, in a conflict, you have state actors who have obligations, and you also have non-state actors. And you understand that the room for maneuver there is more loose because non-state actors do not have obligations because they're not part of international treaties. But countries, state actors who are part of international treaties are obligated to follow them. So in this case, we have the 4 Geneva Conventions, and whatever has an aspect of humanitarian protection, Greece is on the front line. Because we have been in the past at war. We have had in the past become refugees ourselves. So the protection of people, the protection of civilians is a priority. I think you're asking me if that principle can be enforced in specific aspects on the ground. That takes the whole of the Security Council working together. So with position being what they are at the moment, I think it's a significant progress that we have a ceasefire and that there are many voices in the Security Council who advocate for the protection of civilians and for humanitarian assistance. Greece and Cyprus have been always on the front line for that. Now, the more, if you allow me, sensitive issues, what will happen the next day, that again, the whole team of the UN Security Council has to talk together and has to agree and has to keep away from the veto power. So we will see how it unfolds. Okay? Thank you.
Sadie. I think I read on this site somewhere that in a recent response that the Greek representative talked about the position of Greece was a two-state solution, and that's what I read. Is that
That's
correct?
the position of the European Union for years.
And Greece as well. Okay. May I have Damien? I think Damien will talk about a domestic issue, but maybe if I ask you to think about the issue in a global kind of aspect to it, if you could, Damien, so that the consul can actually respond to you. So I'm talking about question 1 there.
So introduce yourself. Hello, my name is Davey, I'm a Guinness Economy major. And my question is, how did the violent acts at the Golden Dawn affect the international perception of Greece, especially throughout the media, and has this influenced Greece's relations and role within the United Nations Security Council?
Okay. So this, yes, it has a domestic side. But thank you for the question. So, as all countries, you know, we share our own struggles to have democracy and to sustain democracy. There are many challenges, especially in today's world. So in a democracy, you have the opposition. So if the opposition is more democratic than the government or less democratic, that is a bet that minds greater than mine have to think about it. But in a democracy, every voice is allowed. Do we agree with that voice? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But they have their voice. So what happened there, you know that after periods of extreme economic problems and restraints, people tend to go to the extremes. So that was the case with Greece as well. But if you look now, that party does not exist. That party is no longer there. That party does not dictate or draft law or make policy because it was announced a criminal organization. For me, that is the power of a democracy. You have a party that was voted in parliament at an especially challenging time domestically, but then people had the right to change their minds. And you had courts to uphold the Constitution and to uphold the freedom of expression and to make judgments. So a court has announced, has decided that that party is not a party, is a criminal organization. Again, how many other countries can say that such extremes are taken to court and are being abolished by a court of law? That is the level of democracy. So democracy, we can talk about democracy, but the essence of democracy is everyday life, and it's dealing with challenging situations like that. That party no longer exists. That, to me, is a triumph of democracy. Thank you for your question. Thank you.
So for those who didn't know what Golden Dawn is, Damien was referring to a neo-Nazi party that rose during the time of financial crisis, and then they were tried, put to prison, and it's a criminal organization. But I guess the greater question that around this is the rise of white supremacy in Europe and in the world, and what is the position of the United Nations Security Council on this topic, perhaps. And then there is a question. So as she's answering this, maybe you can walk to position yourself for the question.
Again, I think the answer is that the UN Security Council has a specific mandate. And because the United States is comprised of states, one of the essential principles of international law is that one state does not get itself involved in the domestic policies of the other state. Otherwise, can you imagine, we would not be able to function. So the UN Security Council does not have the mandate to deal with that. It has the mandate to maintain peace and security. If a domestic situation is taken out of control and it leads to a threat to international peace or security, then the UN Security Council is going to be there. If you look at the agenda, there are some conflicts, some areas that have been on the agenda of the Security Council for years. Does that mean that the Security Council is not doing its job? No. It means that it has its limits. It cannot, apart from Chapter 7, ask for a mission to stop the conflict. So international law is a very delicate balance, but I can assure you that it works. It works. It may take time, but it works.
Hello, my name is Max. I'm entrepreneurship major. I just had a quick question. It is Greece's stance on conscientious objectors' rights.
Excellent question. I used to deal a lot with that when I was heading the Human Rights Department of the ministry. So, it's a domestic law. It was approved by the Greek government. As I said, each state knows better its own conditions, its own provisions, and its own problems. So, we are a small country. We have our issues, our disagreements with some of our neighbors. So, one of the essence of the state is to be able to apply authority, to enforce authority, of course, to its own nationals. We're not talking about other countries. So Greece, the Greek parliament has made a decision that it needs an army to protect itself in case of an attack. That decision, which is a decision that I don't think there's a country that doesn't have an army, even Switzerland, which is a neutral state, has a body of an army that, of course, they're guarding the Pope. It's a different kind of army. But the essence of the army is an essential element of every state. The need to have an obligatory military service for Greek males was made more strong when we were threatened by our neighbor with a casus belli. So the casus belli is when somebody openly threatens you, if you do this, I'm going to attack you. What do? You work on the diplomatic level, you try to explain that this should not come to the result of war, but on the same time, you prepare. So, for Greece, which is still under the casus belli from Turkey, we are not allowed. The threat is that if we use the rights we have from UNCLOS, Maritime Security 6 and 2 together, UNCLOS is the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. We are a party, Turkey is not. So Turkey, for reasons that I think are too broad to explain in this session, decided not to sign, not to ratify the treaty. We did. And at one point, we said we want to exercise our right to extend our territorial sea. And Turkey said, if you do that, it's going to be war. So that threat is still on the table. What do? We do what every country does, we prepare. This being said, there may be some people who don't want to serve, who don't believe in the military and the need to have a military. And that is their right. It's not a human right, it's a right. The human right behind this is the freedom of expression. They express freely their objection to serve, to be drafted. There are policies. We used to receive a lot of complaints about that one in my old position. First of all, it's a national law. We have to adhere to the law. Second of all, these people are not thrown in jail. They are offered the choice to do an alternative service, social service. So you don't go to the army for, I think now it's less than 2 years obligatory. That never bothered me because I wasn't going to be drafted. So it used to be from, you go to the army for 3 years, now it's almost half. So that is progress. So people who don't want to be drafted, they are given the option not to serve, fine, but they have to do community service. And they have to do double the time in community service. Some people disagree with that. They think that is not equality, that does not respect that all people are equal in the eyes of the law. But then you have to think, what if all males in Greece said, I don't want to go to the army? So my experience had told me that human rights are felt and they are exercised when you lose them. In this case, they don't lose their human right to express freely their objection. That being said, there are administrative measures that are taken by the state. That doesn't at all stop the right to freely express their objection to joining the military. So I find this to be in accordance with the Constitution and in accordance with human rights. You have the right to say, you're not going to draft me, and the state has the right to ask you to do community.
Okay, so I wanted to ask, because we are kind of running out of time, how about any questions on Pillar 4 on the climate? Do we have anybody on this? And as you're thinking about this, I'm just pulling up the explanation of all the pillars. And if Antonella is still here, I just found it says that Greece will assist through capacity building by means of transfer of know-how and expertise towards the reduction of poverty and inequality. So rather than actually giving money, you give the know-how by means of transfer. So any questions on the climate? Just been through a firestorm, so I was expecting more questions about this pillar. or anything else? We have a few more minutes, so one and then the other, yes. And also the professors in the room, they can ask questions as well, although this is a student event, right?
Hello, my name is Simon. My question is not about climate. I'm curious if you think the Parthenon marbles will ever be returned to Greece.
Yes, I truly believe they will, because of the sheer force of public opinion and of justice. So it is a just cause. And I truly believe that a time will come, I'm not saying tomorrow or the day after, but I am in awe of the shift in the public opinion in the UK. They have done strands to understand that the argument against the return at first was that we're not able to protect them, which I think it's not so strong an argument. But then we had the New Acropolis Museum, and whoever chooses to go to Greece in the summer should definitely go to the New Acropolis Museum. It is a wonder. It is centuries of civilizations in one building. And from the cafeteria, you can see the Parthenon. You can feel that you're touching the Parthenon. And the marbles are not there, so why not? I'm optimistic because of the shift in the public opinion of the United Kingdom. And I believe in the strength of people-to-people communications. Otherwise, I wouldn't be a diplomat. Thank you.
And this falls under number 2 again, respect for cultural heritage. Just letting you know. Okay, yes.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth. I'm a freshman political science major. You explained your work in global human rights. Now, I was just wondering what human rights do you specifically hold closest to you, as well as what human rights issues would you like to see Greece take a stronger stance on that maybe it hasn't so much in the past? Maybe that was climate, I don't know. But what would you like to see them do more so in the Security Council hotspot list?
That's a good question, the way you phrase it, because climate per se is not a human right. The protection of health is a human right. And that is how the climate aspect falls into the discussion. I dealt with human rights in Geneva. I dealt with human rights as a director of the department. I don't have any complaints. And again, I use migration as an example. I challenge you to find another, I'm not limiting the scope to European Union member states. Find another country who in the past 10 years has done the amount, has adopted the amount of policies and action plans and measures to protect migrants and refugees. To protect refugees, to be correct in terminology, and to guarantee their human rights to migrants. So, for us to have chosen to put climate on the agenda, on our priorities for the agenda of the Human Rights Council, of the United Nations Security Council, by itself speaks volumes, because we understand that you cannot have peace and security without having a look at climate. And if you look at Africa, you have droughts, you have extensive years with no rain, so people need to move to find food. That causes conflict. So to select, to emphasize climate in relation to peace and security speaks volumes. Now, I can tell you, because recently I was invited to speak to Chapman University about such issues. We take climate change very seriously. We take the rise of seawater level very seriously. We are a tourist country. The Mediterranean is it's an almost closed sea. So the change in the weather conditions As you see, the fire that we have 2 weeks ago, which I was affected, but I was of the lucky ones. The house is still there. I cannot just go home yet. You had winds of 100 miles per hour, and the winds were in flame. So you had the wind being on fire, moving down the Pacific Palisades and Altadena, etc. So this is an issue that should concern everybody. But the right is the right to a clean environment. So you have fires, you have floods. When they reach the level that they threaten international peace and security, this body should act. I'm not saying that the fires are threatening international peace and security, but if you take all the little aspects together, the droughts, the floods, the hurricanes, the wildfires, and the rise of sea level, all that pose a threat to humanity. Because where will we go to escape the fires? Where will we go to escape the floods? So on a political level, this body is not going to deal with how you're rebuilding Los Angeles. It's going to deal with what we can all do together, all the international community, the General Assembly, under the guidance of the UN Security Council, with specific proposals how we can do better. And to answer your other question, I think that yes, climate on the international level, we need to do more. We had suffered in Greece almost every summer from wildfires. We are making progress. Early warning is, I think, one of the most effective means. You see it, you use a drone, you see it, you send the plane, and they quench the fire, yes. Okay, so, but the Security Council is not gonna deal with technicalities. It's gonna tell the world that we must look into this issue, because when mass populations move, there's a threat to peace and security, and this concerns everybody. So I have to say the expression has been used many, many times, but we do live in a globalized world. What happens in Asia affects us. What happened in LA affects Australia. We are interconnected. We cannot do one without the other. And that is the firm position of a diplomat because, again, the 3Ds, that's what we work for, and that's what we strive for. Talking together, finding solutions is not going to happen over time, but just talking about them, being on the same table, people who disagree normally, that is progress. That is progress. Thank you. Yeah, it will take time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this point, I just think that we should wrap up, and the consul may also stay outside to speak with you, or you can come and talk to her. We want to thank her again for taking the time to talk to you. As she mentioned, her home in Pacific Palisades, the consul home in the Highlands, was not affected, but she's been a refugee. Displaced.
I'm a displaced diplomat.
A displaced diplomat. I want to thank you again and encourage all of you, if you're interested in topics to do with Greece, there is a number of events that we're hosting this year. In this room, on 13th till the 15th of February, we'll have a number of screenings on the archaeological site of Eleusis, where the Eleusinian mysteries happened. This now is a city that is a refinery, and we're looking at how people who live there, who were immigrants from and stricken by poverty, how this area is trying to reintegrate to the city and a relationship to the archaeological site. So the archaeological sites become a way of connecting to your territory, your history, and your sense of being. So that's what we'll do with the screenings in this room. We also have on the 27th, one of the students brought me in touch with a director who is Ukrainian, and we will have the director coming from New York to speak to us. 27th of February, again in this room, screening of his film called Bucha. He was the screenwriter for Zelensky, and this is a film talking about the destruction of a whole city. And someone of Jewish religion who was not Ukrainian helped so many Ukrainians and saved their lives. So that's that film. And then the last one that I want to advertise to you, we have a Roman conference the end of February. So if you're interested, my colleague is here to give you more information. And what we call the LMU Greek Cinema Week, March 11 till the 18th, where the topic this year is an homage to god Zeus, the ancient Greek god, and specifically an attribute given to him, Xenius, that is the god that protects guest friendship, hospitality, essentially humane relationships. And it talks about the giving asylum in the ancient city of Athens as a marker of civility. So I will screen some films that talk about xenophobia, the rise of xenophobia at the time of financial crisis, forced displacement, and asylum seekers, topics that are very current, but I always start from the ancient world to see what that world tells to us today. So please ask me if you have any questions or look up the events on the Classics and Archaeology site. Again, I want to thank our Dean Richard Fox, who is here, the Chair of Classics and Archaeology, Professor Dan Speak, my colleague from Political Science, Jennifer Ramos, who is responsible for all the global local affairs in at LMU, as well as Fulbright, and Father Michael Curry, who teaches Eastern Orthodoxy. So catch each one of us, ask us, and of course, colleagues from the Classics and Archaeology Department. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you very much. So good.